to everyone here, and for those joining virtually, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to Peace Corps' Global Connections Growing Together Storytelling event. My name is Darlene Grant, and I am Senior Advisor in the Office of the Director of the Peace Corps, a returned Peace Corps volunteer, Cambodia 2009 to 2011, and former country director to Mongolia and Kosovo. On behalf of the Peace Corps, we are thrilled to be back at the Kennedy Center's Millennium Stage for our third storytelling event. This year, the event is even more special, as this week is Peace Corps Week, which celebrates the founding of the agency by President John F. Kennedy on March 1st, 1961. This gathering and the stories of growth that will be shared are a tribute to his enduring legacy. This event represents the first time that all of the Peace Corps is represented in our storytelling. Most people, when they think of the Peace Corps, they think of the typical volunteer that serves in countries around the world for 2 years. The Peace Corps, however, is more than that. It is also the Peace Corps response volunteer, serving on shorter, more focused assignments. It is the staff that supports our volunteers. It is the local counterparts that collaborate with the volunteers. It is the community members with whom volunteers live and work. Peace Corps volunteer service is intensely personal. It's an experience that most often ends up as a story of growth that is embedded within the context of professional work, community, relationships, and the agency's mission of world peace and friendship. This evening, we have returned volunteers, Peace Corps staff, volunteers who are currently serving, former students, and a Peace Corps counterpart, each taking the stage as exemplars of Peace Corps storytelling culture. We hope that their stories about how they have grown together will excite your imagination, inspire you, and give you a glimpse of how Peace Corps' approach, grounded in mutual respect and collaboration, is a catalyst for connection. Without further ado, our first storyteller is Alexis Faith. Originally from Morrisville, Vermont, and currently serving as an education volunteer, Alexis has been a volunteer in Peace Corps South Africa since January 2023. Please join me in welcoming Alexis, who will tell her story, The Umbrella.
A major rite of passage in your journey of integration is the day when you can walk to your local spaza shop or corner store by yourself. However, the first thing you'll learn about doing this is that while you left the house by yourself, you're not actually alone, because especially in my village in Mpumalanga, South Africa, everybody's your neighbor, literally and figuratively. And we also have a South African culture of greetings all day long. The morning, the night, the first or the 10th time I'm seeing you that day, no matter what. Dumelang, ahey, lekai, riteng lekai. My spaza shop is about a 3 to 4 minute round trip if we were in America. However, in South Africa, on my first time, it was taking me upwards of 7 to 10 minutes because I was just greeting. I was so happy greeting the whole time. So I had finally arrived to the last road that would take me straight to my house when something caught my eye. An umbrella. Now, umbrellas are not that uncommon in South Africa, especially in the summertime, because they're the perfect shield for the sun. So what I actually noticed were the colors. It was purple and white. In fact, it was the exact same shade of purple and white as the university that my sister attended. But there's no way, right? Anyway, I could tell it was a woman carrying the umbrella, and she was just far enough away where to greet her, I would have been yelling at her. So I said, "It's been a success. I'm going home." And so just as I turned, there's a herd of cows blocking the entire road. I was not going anywhere. So I turned back around to sneak one more glance at the umbrella. To my surprise, the woman is standing right next to me. She's in the middle of closing her umbrella, and then I see TCU! And the woman with these big, beautiful, very confused eyes is just staring at me. And I think, oh yeah, I need to greet her. Dume lang, lina la meke bukamuso. My sister went to TCU. Do you know it? And now her eyes lit up with recognition and understanding, and she told me that her name is Julia. She's a nurse, and her son was a student at TCU about 5 years ago. And I said, "Julia, my sister was a dancer at TCU about 5 years ago." And so neither of us could believe this connection. We were asking questions and taking selfies, and I wrote down his name, and I sent it immediately to my sister, and I said, "Do you know this person?" And she said, "I mean, his name sounds familiar, but no, I don't know who this person is." And so, the story could end there and be the perfect example of it's a small world. And honestly, I thought it was over until about an hour later, I got a text from my sister that just says, "Wait." In the longest 3 minutes of my life, I then receive a picture of my sister standing next to a woman, and the caption says, "This is Julia's son's girlfriend. We used to work together, which is why he sounded familiar." And it was at that exact moment I got to use my new favorite word in South Africa, which is "yeah." And so later, I saw Julia at a community event, and I showed her the picture, and I told her this new connection, and she was just shocked, but really, I think a better word would be ecstatic, because of this newfound connectedness she had to her son in this new and far-off place that he lived. And honestly, I felt the same, but just in the reverse direction. So then about 4 months pass, and my sister comes to visit, and we go, and obviously we have to meet Julia. And we're sitting in her living room, and we're just smiling and laughing, and it hits me that any different combination of choices made that day could have led to a completely different outcome. I could have kept walking. Julia could have chosen a different umbrella, and I could have said absolutely nothing, but isn't that missing the point of integrating into our communities? Because as I'm watching Julia show pictures of her son to my sister from her phone, it became so clear to me that Peace Corps is really about building world peace and friendship, and to be a Peace Corps volunteer is to just be a person in a community and just be with people, because that is really where the magic happens. And it's really just as simple as looking up, asking questions, and greeting. Because you can never know who is under the umbrella until you say, "Dume lang."
Oh, thank you, Alexis. What an important reminder of how interconnected our world really is. Our next storyteller today is Yessica Iman. Born and raised in Peru, Yessica has been involved with the Peace Corps for many years. Since 2020, she has served as a proud member of the Peace Corps Peru staff, as a small grants coordinator and events coordinator. Please join me in welcoming Yessica with her story, Seeds of Service.
When I was 15 years old, one day someone knocked on my family's door. We opened the door, and there was a Peace Corps volunteer staff. She asked my family if we would like to host volunteers. We were very scared, but we embraced the opportunity. My family hosted a lot of volunteers. We learned a lot from them. But the most I love is when the volunteers told me their experiences about traveling to other countries, speaking other languages, working, helping people. I listened to them like this. And I told them, I want that for me too. I would like that for me too. And I told them, I would like to travel to other countries. I would like to speak other languages. I would like to work helping people. And all of them told me, of course, Yessica, you can do it. Don't forget it, okay? You can do it. During this time, hosting volunteers, I met a special volunteer couple, Katie and Roberto Masferrer. They changed my life completely when one day they called me and asked, Yessica, would you like to teach computer classes to a group of women that had received computers as a donation, but they don't know how to use them? And I said, but Katie and Roberto, I don't know anything about teaching. I don't have experience. And they told me, Yessica, as you taught us Spanish, you are going to be able to teach computer classes. I was so scared. I was just 17 years old, but I traveled with them to this small town called Salacat that was 24 hours far away from Lima, where I used to live, and I did it. I was able to teach computer classes. I was so happy after this experience and empowered that I decided to study education. However, during this time, the Peace Corps decided to move elsewhere. I didn't hear about the Peace Corps for a while, until one day I heard that the Peace Corps returned to my neighborhood and that they were looking for a Spanish teacher. And I told myself, what an excellent opportunity. So I prepared myself harder and I decided to apply. And I got the job. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it when the Peace Corps told me that I was going to be part of the team. I told myself, what a privilege. As a Spanish teacher, one day, I took a group of volunteers to my high school where I used to study because I wanted the volunteers to interact with the students just as I did. That day, the students and the volunteers were very happy. And also that day, the principal of the school asked, Yessica, would you like to tell your story of growing to all the students over here? And I said, yes, of course. So I was telling my story when suddenly I realized that all the students were looking at me like this. In that moment, I could see myself in them. One student asked, Yessica, have you traveled to other countries? And I said, yes. Another student asked, Yessica, do you speak other languages? And I said, yes. And all of them told me, Yessica, I would like that for me too. And I told them, of course, all of you can do it, okay? Don't forget it. All of you can do it. So right now, this 15 little girl would like to say thank you to all the volunteers. Thank you to Katie and Roberto Masferrer. Thank you, Peace Corps. And thank you, Peace Corps Peru.
Thank you, Yessica. Your story is a wonderful reminder that when we are open to it, life is full of unanticipated opportunities. Our next story comes from the dynamic duo of Giang and Fabian Ryan. Giang, who hails from New York, completed her service as a Peace Corps response volunteer in St. Vincent and the Grenadines 2023 to 2024. Giang is joined by one of her students, Fabian Ryan. Fabian, a 5th grade student in one of the schools where Giang started her Peace Corps service, is now in 6th grade at New Grounds Primary School in St. Vincent. Please welcome Giang and Fabian, who will share their story, an unlikely friendship.
At the age of 70, I left my 2 young grandchildren and served as a Peace Corps response volunteer last year. The invitation from the Ministry of Education at St. Vincent and the Grenadines came because of their local students' learning loss in the past few years, partially because of a big volcano eruption. So, when my landlady's family took me to visit La Soufrière, the active volcano, I was totally in awe. Fabian, their 9-year-old son, a student in one of the schools that I was serving, took me onto the trail towards the crater. I was saddened greatly by the vast stretch of forest destroyed, the ruined villages abandoned. Fabian's story of the most recent La Soufrière eruption broke my heart.
I was 7 years old then on December 27, 2020. La Soufrière began to tremor and rumble, and on April 9, 2021, huge smoke rose from the volcano and covered the sky. I remember looking outside to see nothing but darkness, even though it was daytime. This continued for weeks, with rumbling of the volcano and ashfall. All schools were forced to close for more than 2 years between COVID and the volcanic eruption. I felt lonely and frustrated. I terribly missed seeing my teachers, hanging out with my friends, and the one-on-one tutoring of the Peace Corps volunteer working in my school. When school finally resumed, Miss Giang came.
Fabian and I bonded quickly despite our age difference. His bright smile and warm hugs were magical in curing my homesickness. He took me around the neighborhood and fed me with the wild plums from the trees. Fabian is always interested in the world outside the island, including American culture and Chinese culture, once he learned that I was a first-generation immigrant from China. At his urge, I taught him some Chinese expressions. Every morning, I cheer up when I hear Fabian calling out,
Zhao Shang Hao, meaning good morning in Chinese.
when I discuss with his mother, a teacher in school, about work-related issues, Fabian would chime in.
Bie Zhongji, meaning don't worry in Chinese.
That always made me laugh and forgot about my worries.
I always have to remind Miss Jen not to worry because she worries about everything, like what to eat, what to wear, what was the right thing to do in school. I was even her little translator for local Creole and interpreter for Vincentian dialect. Every time I went down by Miss Jen, she was always busy, but somehow found time for me. She taught me how to create digital artwork with a software called Procreate. She taught me how to create a story, something I enjoy doing and would love to continue.
As a lifelong educator, I believe the best teaching is to engage students in doing something they find interesting and meaningful. That was exactly what I did with the Fabian, the very essence of my teacher training last year, promoting learner-centered, reading and writing-based curriculum and instruction.
After school and on weekends, Giang and I worked on creating children's story about St. Vincent. Our story shows that with the help of the Peace Corps Dove and the Vinci Parrot, our national board protected St. Vincent from 2 aggressive foreign dragons. Several teachers in my school and other schools have shown the video to their classes. Students all loved it. I hope that more students in St. Vincent will get to improve in their literacy by reading and writing.
From a student struggling with reading difficulties in early grades to an amateur online children's story writer, Fabian has taken a big leap forward with direct help from more than one Peace Corps volunteer. Before the close of my service this year, Fabian has written, illustrated, narrated, and self-published on YouTube his own children's story, Boats Lost at Sea, that filled me with pride. I feel that I've found my third grandchild while serving on St. Vincent Island.
I am proud to be Miss Yen's Vinci grandson. Thank you, Peace Corps, for giving me an American grandma and opening up my world. Share.
I have a Kleenex here in my pocket. Thank you, Giang. Thank you, Fabian. The power of connection is truly evident in your story. Our next storyteller is Abankum Kevin. Kevin was born and raised in Cameroon, an educator and school administrator. He has served as counterpart to Peace Corps volunteers since 2018, developing a passion for community action, volunteerism, and youth empowerment along the way. Please welcome Kevin to the stage to tell his story, The Path of Transformation.
In a small village in the eastern part of Cameroon arrived a Peace Corps volunteer called Kevin Strom. We were all so excited because it was our first volunteer to receive in our community. But we were wondering if Kevin would be able to cope with the scorching sun that hits you directly on the face like a hand and the heavy rains that would thunder like a concert of drums. Every day, if we're not in school, then we should be visiting one home in the community, because to us, complete communal integration is that a stranger should share a meal with at least half of the population. Sharing to us is a craft. Before we could realize, Kevin became part of us. Kevin 1, myself, and Kevin 2. One day, as I was carrying out my daily routine as the school discipline master, I realized one female student dragging herself to school. I looked at the time, she was 1 hour late. I became very furious and charged towards her, calling out in a loud, authoritative, and intimidating tone, typical to discipline in our community context. The young lady folded herself and started crying. Later that day, we were seated at our usual spot with Kelvin beside a river that flows through the village and watching the sun as it is casting its light through the fast approaching dark. Kevin broke the silence. Bro, as he used to call me. You know I have so much respect for you. You have taught me to become a great teacher and to successfully integrate into the community. Don't you think that the manner of approach towards that student was not very appropriate? She is always late, and besides, aggressiveness works best for students. Kevin shook his head in disapproval and said, you are mixing up between discipline versus punishment and respect versus fear. Which is more valuable, fear or respect? I did not answer, and Kevin continued. If there is one thing I have learned in this community, it is from the saying, I am you and you are me. We should not always put power at the center of our relationship, but treat each other the way we want to be treated. However, I decided, because of Kevin's advice, which was very laudable intellectually, but I could not reconcile that with our traditional approach, in which to educate a child, we must break their physical and psychological courage. I therefore decided at least to observe Kevin's approach, not because I wanted to learn, but because I wanted to prove Kevin wrong. I was like every day, come on, looking for a situation to prove Kevin wrong. But months came, months went, I saw no opportunity. But I was instead surprised to realize that there was one very notorious male student in discipline in Kevin's class whom Kevin transformed positively. I had to bury my pride and go towards Kevin. Kevin told me that if we break a child's psyche and make them to live in fear, they will not be able to explore their inner potentials and can become more indisciplined in future. With all of this, I had no other option than to adopt Kevin's approach. And the first thing I did was to call the female student I shouted at some months ago. Aisatu, I would need to see you, as she was called. When she arrived at my office, I said, in a very polite way, have a seat. But we could see fear all over Aisatu's body. It wasn't also very easy for me to ask for forgiveness, because to us in our community, the elder is always right. But there was a voice telling me, you need to do it, you need to do it. I opened my mouth and the words came out. Aisatu, I know you do not deserve the way I treated you the other day. Can you look for a place in your heart and forgive me? As Aisatu took up her hair, you could see a tiny smile on her face. And she said, sir, nobody has ever said this to me. I am also very sorry, and I promise to change. I later realized with so much remorse that Aisatu had family challenges. But as from that day onward, she became very active in all school activities until the two of us created a ladies' club in school to help and empower teenage student mothers. The funny thing about my story is that I became an advocate of gentler discipline approach. Some of my colleagues were even mocking at me and calling me names. But to me, the results I recorded were far more constructive than the traditional approach. I would therefore say that my relationship with the Peace Corps volunteer, Kevin Strom, was very impactful. Kevin told me that he learned to become a great teacher. Why? I was transformed to adopt gentler discipline approach, which has helped me in my career as a discipline master. I would therefore say, like we say in my community, I am you, you are me.
Thank you, Kevin. Your story is a wonderful reminder that rarely there is ever just one solution to a problem. Up next is Fiorella Hojai. Fiorella, or Fiore, is a 19-year-old political science student at the University of Tirana. She is, I am assured, a dynamic force in her community. Fiore is a former student of a married couple that served as Peace Corps volunteers in Albania 2023. Yeah? Both are here this evening. Please welcome Fiore to share her story, an Albanian fairy tale.
Naishtenyoher, or once upon a time, in the enchanting part of northern Albania, there lived a 13-year-old girl called Fiore. That's me. Envision a teenager armed with straight A's, the reigning champion of shyness, the queen of arrogance, and occasionally a dabbling egoist. Proudly sitting in the back of the class in my small town, predominantly Muslim and male-dominant, still affected by the Kosovo War and in the middle of transition from communism to democracy. I was thinking that it was going to be a day like every other one, but I saw this gorgeous woman entering my class and thinking to myself that she doesn't look at all like those American movies I've seen. Well, Neda was an Iranian immigrant to the United States who aimed to give back to a country she loved and now called home. So she just swept into my world. Skeptical at first, I was soon pulled out of my comfortable shell by Neda, the catalyst to a journey beyond my wildest imagination. As if she knew me and felt me, as we were the same, Neda, with a firm grip, transformed me from a timid girl to help me discover a more vibrant version of myself. Among many activities, my favorite was assisting her in presentation translations. Not only did I learn a lot, but I also cherished her respect and sensitivity to our culture, having experienced it herself. And the best part, my English evolved from robotic monotony to genuine conversations, discovering the importance of giving to others and thinking beyond myself. But the surprises didn't end there. Alongside Neda came PJ, her husband. Initially seen as smart, yet occasionally grumpy character, I soon learned that he was very dedicated to empowering our community of Tropoi. Together, they advocated for projects that transformed our community, from creating the first summer camp to securing safe spaces for youth and rehabilitating schools and clinics. As I was coming out of my shell, we created Glow Club Tropoi, which stands for Girls Leading Our World. And it didn't just empower me, but all the girls of my community. Until one morning, I wake up from a text message from Neda saying, "Let me know as soon as you wake up." And of course, the first thing I do is call her. Before even saying good morning, she says, "Are you sitting or standing?" And I remember telling her, "Well, I just opened my eyes. What am I supposed to be doing?" I could feel from the phone the tension and sadness accompanied by these words. "I don't know how to tell you, but I have to. We are being evacuated to the United States in only 8 hours because of COVID." As she was explaining the situation, I was holding back my tears and didn't say a word. But again, she felt me. So they both gave me and my community their Albanian besa. Besa is the strongest promise you can give to someone and never break it. She said we will be back in the blink of an eye. Months went by, a year went by, and as you can tell, it wasn't just a blink of an eye. But they kept their besa. They did come back to Tropoi. Now, year after year, they keep coming back, and it means so much to our community, to the forgotten North. Assimilating to the new culture, learning new traditions, and earning people's trust is challenging. But Neda and PJ embraced it all, and now they are Tropoians. So here's to Fiore, here's to me, the lucky teenager who learned that commitment and persistence can change the world. One determined PJ and one vibrant Neda at a time. Here's to the fairy tale that unfolded not in a castle, but in the heart of a small Albanian town.
Aha, you served in 2019. Thank you, Fiore. I know that your Albanian family is not here today, but your Peace Corps family is, and we are proud. Our next storyteller, is Carla Olat. Carla hails from California. Having a lengthy career as an educator and mother of two, she retired before fulfilling an aspiration that began in 1974 of joining the Peace Corps. Carla realized that dream and served as a life skills volunteer in Botswana from 2011 to 2014. Please welcome Carla to the stage as she tells her story, Serving While Black.
Jubileng bora le bomma, le ina lame Carla Olat. Hello, gentlemen and ladies. My name is Carla Olat. I have long considered myself black with a capital B and very Afrocentric. So when it became time for me to pick a place to study for my junior year abroad, I chose the University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. It wasn't accepted in time for me to actually go. So I promised myself, proverbial come hell or high water, I was gonna make it to my motherland someday, some way. My longtime friend from high school and college, Robert Irving, went into the Peace Corps right after graduation from LMU, and we stayed in touch. He was in a number of places, including, wait for it, Tanzania. So I said, that's how I'm gonna do it. And it only took me 37 years. The dog died, the kids were grown and gone. The Okavango, the Kalahari, the gods must be crazy, the #1 ladies detective agency, Botswana. When I got off the plane in Africa, I said, I'm home. And this was further supported by the fact that I was the only one in my group to be waved through customs as we went to our connecting flight from Johannesburg to Gaborone, Gabs. But I found out very soon I wasn't home. I had fundamentally more in common with the other people in my group than I did with almost 2 million people, black people, in Botswana. We were there because of HIV/AIDS. They had lost almost an entire generation. And one of the hardest hit demographics were teachers. And so as a life skills volunteer, I was expected to help mitigate that. And to help mitigate that, I was supposed to capacity build teachers and future teachers. Okay, I came with more than 30 years of experience as an educator. I was a teacher, counselor, administrator. I was ready. But I found out it wasn't about mitigating that as much as it was about doing for them what they had chosen not to do for themselves because it was difficult. All my life, my gender, my ethnicity have been determining factors in how I am perceived, how I am treated, what is expected of me, what is not expected of me. And coming to Botswana wasn't that different. And they added age and nationality. Some of the host families complained because they didn't get real Americans, white folks. But I got Machivana. This incredible woman who was considered an official man because she was over 70 taught me there was no reason for you not to do what you came here to do. And because of that, because of her, Peace Corps became the second most profound experience of my life. The first being motherhood, in case you were wondering. Now, I didn't get to capacity build teachers until very late into my 3rd year. I extended, but I did get to teach. I taught primary, I taught junior and senior secondary. I taught in a boys' prison, which is a whole nother story. Sometimes let me tell you about the condom demonstration. And I did cultural exchange. You should see me teaching faculty, staff, and students at the Soroy College for Teachers, the Electric Slide, to Stevie Wonder music, signed, sealed, delivered, I'm yours. Because of Peace Corps, because of my Peace Corps family, because of my Machibana, because of the people I worked for, the people I worked with, I am a better me. I have now visited 24 states and DC, 24 countries and lived in 4. And I take the lessons I learned in Peace Corps everywhere I go and I apply them every chance I get. And because of that, I think I've made a difference. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you, my Machibana. I want to thank you, Peace Corps. I want to thank you, Botswana. I am a better me. And that's pretty darn awesome. Que la boca, ta 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 ta.
Thank you, Carla. Your story gets to the heart of what makes Peace Corps volunteer service so special: dreams, perseverance, and resilience. Our next storyteller is Augustine Adai, known as August. August is a currently serving Peace Corps volunteer teaching English at a primary school in North Macedonia. Originally born and raised in Ghana, West Africa, August's desire to become a Peace Corps volunteer was kindled by his own experience with a Peace Corps volunteer serving in his high school in Ghana. Please welcome August as he shares his story, Baba Nada.
When I exited the car, Nada waved her hand at me. That was the first time I noticed her charming smile, which said, "You are in good hands." She did not promise me anything when we first met, but she delivered everything that made me feel like there is no foreign place in this world, just one big home with many rooms. Nada was my Peace Corps host and landlady in Veles, Macedonia. But she became my Baba and my friend. Baba means grandmother in Macedonian. When we got into the house, Nada served me lunch in a way that made me feel at home within minutes. That evening, accompanied by her family, she gave me a house tour. Later, the tour continued into the garden. And as we walked around the garden, she picked blackberries and figs for me to eat. Then we collected walnuts from under the big walnut tree behind the house, and we took selfies. During the next 7 months, Nada and I became good friends. She invited me several times to join her family for dinner and conversation. We celebrated holidays together. On Thanksgiving Day 2022, I took over Nada's kitchen as chef. Although my cooking turned out poorly, they enjoyed it like food from a Michelin restaurant. When I fell sick right before Christmas, Nada took great care of me until I recovered. Because I like to garden, sometimes I tended the garden with Nada. And while gardening, she told me stories about her late husband and her family. There were several instances of lost in translation, which made us laugh like children. But since we were kindred spirits, we understood each other beyond spoken words. Growing up in Ghana, in a traditional community, the place of grandparents was sacred. In the presence of Nada and her family, I felt reborn in Macedonia. Nada would command me, Auguste, sit. Auguste, eat. Auguste, more. I followed those directions faithfully because they were golden commands from Baba Nada, and who was I to disobey? I can still hear her voice when I think of her. One evening, when Nada invited me to join her family, I unintentionally went up in my pajamas. About an hour into the visit, when I realized I was in my pajamas, I wanted to go back to my place and change. But Nada told me to stay put, and I did. But I became very self-conscious, and they had a lot of fun laughing at me. I blushed so much I turned blue, but they couldn't see that because my face is black. Then Nada went and brought her own pajamas, held them up, and said, "See, Auguste, pajama party." We all broke out into uncontrollable laughter. It was an unforgettable evening. In April 2023, Nada's health began to decline. She lost her vitality, but not her charming smile. On April 22nd, after we planted a pine tree to replace a dead one in the garden, Nada gave me a divine smile I had never seen on her face before. Then she hugged me, and looking into my eyes, she called my name. She had her own way of calling my name. It was sweet, it was familiar, and it was delicious. Just 4 days later, Nada's health took a quick downturn. That morning, when I was in the garden, she came to me, and standing under the big walnut tree, with her right hand on her chest and another divine smile on her face, she looked at me and said, "Auguste, T.C. Moisen, you are my son." I smiled and said, "Da, Nada, always, always." Later that day, when she brought me some food, as she often did, and I thanked her, she said to me, "Thank you, Auguste." Then she smiled and went back upstairs. And that was our last encounter. When I was informed of her death, a mere 2 days later on May 1st, my heart broke and I cried like a lost child. It was the saddest day of my time in Macedonia. Now, when I look at the pine tree we planted and remember the hug and the smiles and the inspiring words, "You are my son," I consider them as treasures she gave me to comfort me as I continue my Peace Corps journey without her. I never imagined what a lovely Baba would be waiting for me in Macedonia when I applied to join the Peace Corps. I cherish her love, her friendship, and her hospitality. With Baba Nada, I was always in good hands, and she touched my life forever.
Thank you, August. Your story is a testament to the transformative power of intercultural familial connection and of love. Your story is a benediction. Whew. Our final storyteller is Clayton Kennedy, born and raised in Missouri. Clayton is currently the Pacific Regional Strategic Advisor with Peace Corps, including working with youth to address the impacts of climate change in the Pacific Islands. Also a former staff member of Peace Corps Fiji. Clayton is a returned Peace Corps volunteer, El Salvador 2010 to 2012. Please welcome Clayton and his story, Rosa's Courageous Joy.
At 4 p.m., Rosa's cow swallowed an unripe mango and choked. Black and docile, as much pet as beast, the cow was splayed across the ground wheezing by the time Rosa's husband and son arrived to the remote mountainside pasture in El Salvador. They worked to calm the cow and clear her airway, but as the sunset faded, they slumped to the ground. The cow was dead. She was weeks from giving birth. Swiftly, Rosa's son scampered down the mountain to their tiny farming village for a knife, flashlight, and their horse. When he returned, the husband stared at the cow for a moment. Hija, they called her, daughter, and then got to work. They loaded the best meat and pelt onto the horse, and at 9:30 p.m. began to lead him down the mountain path. Minutes later, as they rounded a dark switchback, the horse's hoof slid out and he buckled, coming down hard on his side, the weight of the meat seizing him into a slide down the ravine. The husband, rope wrapped around his hand, went with him, wrenched arm first into the tumble. 20 meters down, they slammed into a gully. The husband's shoulder was dislocated, his body bruised and cut. The horse, dead. Cow, calf, horse, gone in 3 hours. Dairy, income, transportation, pride, gone. Rosa's eyes glistened with fatigue and emotion the next morning as she stepped onto the porch of the tiny home her community had built for me, their first Peace Corps volunteer. Her dark hair was pulled back, her skirt colorful, and her hand heavy with a plate of uncooked cuts of steak. They'd lost a cow last night, she explained, but at least they hadn't lost the meat. For you, she said in Spanish, her weary face lifting into a smile. We set the meat marinating and took off for her 2-room adobe home, Rosa sharing details as we walked. The loss was devastating. No more milk for the kids, no more cash from loaning the horse, no more help with heavy loads during the rainy season. But the daily chores of life don't stop, she told me softly as she served me lunch. You've got to keep going. As I ate, Rosa told me how Hija used to munch straight from her hand, the cow's big nostrils blowing warm huffs that would tickle the thin skin on her wrists. It's true, isn't it? She asked her husband as he stepped in from stretching the hide. He began a deep, slow laugh and nodded, the heavy lines across his face loosening as he looked at her. Rosa pulled out a cream and began to massage it into his wounds. Over 20 people hiked up the mountain at 10 p.m. last night, she told me, coming as soon as they heard what was happening, rushing to help the injured, haul the meat, hug the child. Rosa paused to set her hand atop her husband's. We're giving away all the meat, making sure that most of the 30 households in this community receive some. It's the custom here. It's always done when somebody loses a cow. I asked her to repeat that. Giving away all the meat of a pregnant cow for free? Rosa nodded. Esa es la unidad. That is unity. The people of El Salvador have not had it easy. Years of civil war evolved into decades of gang violence, punctuated by natural disasters and widespread poverty. And yet, despite that, the people of this little nation smile into the top tier of nearly every global survey of happiness and life satisfaction. Time and again, I witnessed Rosa and her neighbors experience hardship, but they didn't let that get in their way of their love for what is here, their love for who is here. Positivity, hard work, human connection. They are choices these families make, priorities they define and stick to. Doing so is undoubtedly a form of courage, a brave, willful focus on that which is important. What we are, Rosa once told me, is imperfect, poor, and beautiful, and we love to share in this with others. As I stood to leave, Rosa's youngest daughter brought out a box with baby parakeets. They hand-feed the little birds, spooning a watered-down corn dough into their frantic beaks. When the food comes near, the little birds clamp onto the spoon and begin to shake spastically, spraying the dough all over. They're really fun, aren't they? Rosa asked, eyes still glistening with emotion, but now bouncing in imitation of the nestlings. They always make me laugh.
Thank you, Clayton. Thank you for reminding us that true generosity is generosity of spirit, and everyone has something to give. Storytelling is a large part of the essence of Peace Corps. We could stay here all night listening to and telling more stories, but I am told, just a moment, by Andrew, we must leave and go home. Let's leave this event with the knowledge that at minimum, your story will make someone laugh or cry. But at most, your story could be the spark that leads someone to want to serve as a Peace Corps volunteer. 2 final pieces of business. Piece number 1, there is a show that's happening directly after our event, and so we do not want you to wait for the storytellers here. We want you to go to the back, and they will meet you there, all right? The next final piece of business is to invite our storytellers back to center stage for a final round of applause.
Thank you for joining us at the Millennium Stage. For more information about upcoming programming, please check out the Kennedy Center's website or Facebook page. At this time,